the Spirits and Sports History Podcast. With your host, Ryan Dyrud. Expand your knowledge on your favorite spirits, and then enjoy sports history with a mystery.
What's up, everybody? Good evening, and welcome back to another edition of the Spirits and Sports History Podcast here on the Believe Podcast Network, also on LAFBnetwork.com. It's been a little while, little hiatus. Things have been crazy. World's been crazy. We'll get to that in a second, but I am excited to be joined by the former Duke of Glendale, the current Count of Marietta, my man, Michael Thompson. What's going on, brother? How you doing?
Hello, sir. How are you?
Excellent. I'm glad to have you back on the pod talking some mystery, sports mystery.
Thanks, man. Very excited. It beats the daily ritual of doing absolutely nothing.
Right. So what I feel like with any podcast or any guest, you have to ask what everyone's been up to during these 2 months of isolation. So what's life been like for you during all this craziness that the world's going through?
Oh man. Well, I've been kind of blessed in a lot of ways. Like my girlfriend and I, actually right before the pandemic kind of hit its height and the quarantine began, we moved in with her parents, who very kindly and generously took us in to their home in Temecula. Beautiful home. There's a pool here. Lots of dogs. I think we have 7 pets in the house, so that's been keeping us busy.
7 pets. Wow.
It's very idyllic. And they're all very needy too.
Is it 7 dogs or what pets?
It's 4 dogs and 3 cats.
Oof. That's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work. Just been hanging out and not wearing pants for most of the day. And
I take you're not wearing any right now, right?
Oh, I'm not wearing pants. No, absolutely. I like you. I love you. I respect you. But I mean,
it's unnecessary.
A little much with me there. Yeah. Definitely. Liver's taken a big old beating as we continue to do today over this quarantine period.
Mm-hmm.
That's it, really, mate. Yeah. A very surreal pause in the kind of where life was before this happened, which is like go go go. As someone else who lives in LA, this it feels very surreal. It's like, how in America is this happening right now? Where
it's crazy, man. You have
not working, not making money, whatever. Yeah,
and it's like we both are cut from the same cloth in the sense of grind, do whatever you can to grind, and we're still doing that, but it looks very different now because you're asked to do things different, and you have this pandemic, and then you have all of a sudden this horrible action that happened against George Floyd, and all these riots and everything happening else, and that's caused pause. And basically, I feel like these last 2 days, people have forgotten that we're in the middle of a pandemic, because now all of a sudden we're at a powder keg of racial proportions, and it's very sad and kind of dark time. And we don't need to get totally into that because everyone has their opinions on that. We'll just say it's horrible what's happening. We'll just go with that because it is.
What I was going to say, all of this on top of the spectacular, monumental moment of becoming a new father for you as well, which is crazy too, huh?
Yeah, man. All of that. It's wild. Like my wife were talking today, like, what did we just bring our daughter into? What kind of world did we just bring this poor little girl into, who already has her own battles to go with, and then she has to step foot in a world that is not very welcoming at the moment. But always think positive. Yeah, things will be better. There's still a lot of great people out there, right?
Well, it's up to wonderful, loving and considerate people and parents like yourselves to, I guess, introduce a new generation of human beings in the world that hopefully are the antithesis of all the darkness that maybe we're experiencing right now.
Yeah,
so that's a positive.
Hopefully,
it might change the world.
It's a large undertaking, but we'll do the best we can, and challenge accepted. So hope for the best. But we hope to, on this podcast, provide a little relief from all the horrible stuff going on, and Michael and I, the Count and I, have transcribed the next great sports mystery story. As you know, if you listen to the Spirits and Sports History podcast, we write and tell a sports story that kind of walks you through this entire kind of event that happened, but fictionalizes it a little bit, and then you kind of have to come to conclusions with what event that was. And I think we had fun with this one. We went back and forth, especially because being remote with technology, it's great. You know, you could write a paragraph or two, and then I would jump on and write a paragraph or two. So it's been really fun. Let me just say that, even though it's taken us about 6 months, it's been fun writing this story with you.
Yeah, me too, man. Me too.
Didn't we start this?
We literally had no. Well, you had an excuse. You were kind of a little busy bringing a new human being into the world. I had no excuse.
Didn't we start this back in like October or November in your apartment in Glendale? And here we are in May, end of May, the last day of May.
Yeah.
Complete. But hey, it's going to be well worth the wait, because I think this story is. I think it's a good one, and I hope all of you will enjoy it, and hopefully you can kind of, I think it's going to be tough to guess. I'm going to be honest. It's going to be tough to guess, but hopefully at the end you'll be able to see how the tapestry was woven together. So without further ado, Michael, what do you say? Should we get this a stab?
Let's do it.
All right. Here it is, the latest and greatest Spirits and Sports History story. What's up, sports mystery fans? Here to tell you about the sponsor of today's show, and it's our friends at Bet Online. While you're waiting this out at home, there's still plenty of fun to be had with our partner, betonline.ag. I know right now there's no NBA, no NHL, or the Major League Baseball. All those are coming back soon, but don't worry. BetOnline still has hundreds of games and events and sports to wager on. NASCAR's back. There's Madden and NBA 2K simulations. UFC has been rocking and roaring. And there's obviously the online casino, poker, and blackjack. Be sure to check out The Final Dance. It's a roundtable of interviews from ex-Chicago Bulls Horace Grant, Bill Cartwright, Craig Hodges, and Ron Harper as they discuss the Michael Jordan doc in full. So make sure to go to betonline.ag. Use the promo code MYPOD100. That's MYPOD 100 to receive your welcome bonus on your first deposit. Again, that's betonline.ag and use the promo code MYPOD100. BetOnline, your online wagering solution. And now enjoy the sports mystery story. Hey, Rene, come here real quick, please. Rene sauntered over to the desk where Greg was standing. Take a look at these reservations, would you? We have a big one coming up.
Rene scanned the paper like an editor searching for any grammatical errors. Her eyes were drawn to one name in particular, a name that in her industry was feared by many, a name that had brought many crumbling to their knees. It was also a name that came italicized on the reservation system, meaning that this name, whether beloved or not, was revered by all. Friends of Rene's, southpaws of the food industry, ones that led knife first, watched their careers die, crumble right in front of their eyes under the weight of one name, Jean. Rene had always wondered when her time would come. It felt inevitable. Her success had been the talk of the town. The local patrons often came to Rene to praise her accomplishments, but also to warn her of the responsibility that came with such prosperity, such riches that the sharks in the culinary arena began to circle, waiting for their time to attack. Well, now the time had come.
Jean wasn't always carnivorous, but as of late, the desire to lead knife first and mince the prey that was meat was her utmost desire. Like many, Jean just wanted success. She wanted fame. She wanted the palpable thing that so many lust over. Well, after countless reviews, harsh words on paper, and pissing off seemingly everyone in her wake, she'd accomplished it. And now, Rene's reckoning was just another form of business, just another task at hand, just another delectable bite on the food chain.
Rene didn't believe in the food chain, however. Each day, she witnessed her chefs chopping, filleting, or dicing the flesh of fruit, veg, and animals big and small. It became apparent to her that we all suffer the same fate, no matter our size or ranking. What matters is our process. Rene took pride in hers. It was what she built her business on. And so, the time came to prepare for the showdown that was soon to take place. Rene clambered through the swinging door and into her battleground. a training station. She sifted through a myriad of instruments looking for the utensils that she would carry into her bout. Like two roosters in a cage, this tasteful meeting would end with violence. She found the cut gloves that would be needed for protection and the fillet knives that would be used on the attack. Now, she needed to perfect the recipe that she would serve Jean on the auspicious platter. She had one in mind, but would it be good enough to woo her competitor? It would have to be cooked to perfection, delicate yet aggressive, subtle yet outward. Was Rene up to the task?
Hours before, preparation was already underway. Her chef chopped, dusted with flour, wrapped the dish, massaged the meat before beginning the slow cook and red wine. It didn't help that the restaurant had a 20-top walk-in of investors, meaning they only had to adapt and accommodate, but they were going to have spectators, and important ones. Each of those suits knew exactly who Jean was. Rene maintained focus. Jean was on the floor, and no doubt ready to sink her teeth in.
Rene came to formally greet the VIP, but her attempt at hospitality was met with silence and a sneer. Poor form. But this gave Rene all the motivation she needed. To her, the rude guests were always the easiest to read. Their strategy was simple. They wanted something for free. But she was going to make this one work for her supper. Blistered shishito peppers. Tactically speaking, it was a great appetizer. The thing about these is that while balanced and flavorful, 1 in 10 is a scorcher high on the Scoville chart. As Jean consumed these little jabs of spice and the occasional punch of heat, frenzied capsaicin molecules overtook her palate.
Shishitos were undercooked, snarled Jean.
Well, actually, our chefs blister them so that they maintain a crunchy texture. Not for everyone, though, answered Rene defensively, chin down, fake smile cemented above it. Was there something else our chef can prepare?
Jean waved her away. Where's the restroom? This retreat gave Rene the confidence to serve up the main course, slowly cooking all the while. Beef Wellington. Notorious for its difficulty. Ensuring the beef is rare, but the pastry is flaky and golden requires real mastery. But Rene had only the best in her corner. It dropped at the table. Jean was looking a little weary from the spice. She countered with a few sips of the ice water that sat on the table next to the plate. The cool liquid touched her lips and careened towards the back of her throat. However, it was unable to quench the burn from the opening course. She stared down at the delicacy that was before her, and it stared back at her, as if it was mocking her. Jean drove her fork into the puff pastry and through the Parma ham. She stationed her knife to tear through the carcass. She pierced the skin and drove the knife decisively through the entree.
Rene watched from a distance as Jean consumed some of her finest work.
Jean was a woman of routine. The path that led her to the top was not necessarily a jagged one. It was a rigid one, loaded with plenty of spicy appetizers, delectable entrees, and succulent desserts. She consumed everything and everyone on her path, never stopping to glance behind her, only focusing on what was in front. Well, it came to a time where Jean maybe should have stopped for a moment, glanced side to side, and enjoyed the path she was on. If she had, she may have noticed more, and she would have known more about her opponent, Rene.
Most likely, she would have learned that Rene uses a secret ingredient in her famous beef Wellington, a subtle dash of nutmeg. This peppering of spice gave the dish a unique and pungent flavor, but was also something that Jean was deathly allergic to. What happened next didn't only surprise Rene, but shocked every patron in the crowded restaurant.
Jean leapt up from her seat, sending the flatware flying. Without any sign of composure or control, she flailed her arms, grasping for air. Rene wasted neither time nor movement, setting her opponent down onto the chair once again.
She's in anaphylactic shock, an allergic reaction. Call 911. The room full of patrons looked on, mouths agape. Had they just witnessed the mother of all oversights? A food critic served something they were deathly allergic to. Surely this was not only the end of a dining experience, but the end of a career, Rene's.
Days later, once the dust had settled and the swelling had subsided, Jean would reach out to Rene, but to no response. Eventually, she made the decision to visit her at the same restaurant, the grounds of her defeat and near-death experience. Not entirely certain she'd find Rene there.
But she did. On a sleepy Sunday dinner shift, Jean squared up to Rene once again. Rene was not surprised. She knew this day would come. She neither perspired nor hyperventilated. No rise in blood pressure or racing of thoughts. No, she thought. This is manifest destiny. Jean would go on to concede defeat and reveal that she was unaware that she had any allergies. In fact, she shared in confidence that she had never tried nutmeg before. Some food critic, eh? Muttered Jean, somewhat self-deprecatingly. Jean had learnt in defeat something that could save her life down the line. Thankful and functioning with newfound perspective, she pondered out loud to her old opponent that perhaps in that respect, it was more of a victory. Sure, smiled Rene, happy to let the humble bully have that.
Rene would always have that historic day in November. A warm summer day in the land down under. Well, it may not have been a food allergy that brought the captain of industry to her knees. It was a deafening kick that caused the world to rise. Holly Rene Holm stepped into the arena on that warm day in 2015 as the challenger, as someone that needed approval of the critic. Well, her reviews would be glowing for the remainder of her career after knocking out Ronda Jean Rousey and claiming the belt in UFC 193. A shocking event with quite the tasty finish. Well, there you have it. There you have it. Michael Thompson. That was fun. That was a great story, I think. Yeah, I'm curious if anyone listening actually got along the way. Do you remember, and maybe you didn't, I know we wrote this story together and we obviously did our research and kind of worked through it, but do you remember when this event actually happened?
I do, yeah, I do, because Ronda Rousey was so arrogant going into this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Just like, and you know, that's part of the you know, it's part of the sport, you know, that you have to have an element of you know, of being cocksure and having a swagger, but she was so arrogant.
Yeah.
And yeah, there was some, it felt like there was some poetic justice to that.
Totally. It was said after the fight to be the greatest upset in UFC Ultimate Fighting history. Because of how much of a underdog Holly Holm was. And I think why we chose the restaurant scene to kind of portray this story, I want to hear your side of this, but I know we talked about it, but we had a number of reasons. I know one, for those who don't know, Holly Holm actually started off as a server, which was kind of cool. Before she became this famous Ultimate Fighter, she waited tables, much like me and you. And I think because we have a history of restaurants, we know that it is somewhat of a battleground out there. And so we chose the idea of a food owner and a food critic because that is such a, especially in fine dining, that is such a huge, important battle. I mean, if you don't get the approval of the critic, your restaurant just won't make it. Now, we're not talking about Red Robin or a small chain restaurant, but if you're fine dining going for that Michelin diamond, you need the approval of the critic. So I think that, for me, what made this story so fun was our history in restaurants, but also just the history of the battle of the restaurant owner and the food critic.
Yeah, couldn't agree with you more, man.
Yeah, it was fun to do. So, and I appreciate you for giving your beautiful writing and eloquent voice to portray it.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you, man. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So, I mean, it wouldn't be spirits and sports history if we didn't have a drink while doing it. And I know I kind of lead saying, okay, grab a drink, pour yourself a nice bourbon. I kind of forgot that we were just in the moment. I forgot to say that. So hopefully you had a drink, but
I think it goes without saying that most of your listeners will be drinking at any given moment during quarantine.
I hope so. Yeah. Well, not just my listeners. I think anybody. I think,
anybody.
Yeah. It's the whole 5 o'clock somewhere thing is it's quarantine somewhere. I think that's the new phrase, and it's always going to happen. But the whiskey that we're featuring is Hookers House Bourbon. Delicious. I've tried it for the first time. We have tried it for the first time. We try on this show to choose a bourbon that has something to do with the story. And, with everything going on, I think distributions have maybe gone down a little bit, even though everyone is drinking. I think just with traveling and stuff like that, distribution gone down. So I couldn't find. We were trying to find an Australian whiskey. I know those are few and far between anyway, but that was the goal since this fight actually took place in Australia. And then I was like, okay, we couldn't find an Australian whiskey. So then Holly Holmes from New Mexico. So well, maybe we can find a New Mexico whiskey. Couldn't find a New Mexico one. Ronda Rousey's from California, luckily, so that's very easy. So this Hooker House Bourbon is actually from Sonoma, and it's finished in Pinot Noir bottles. So it has kind of a nice, almost grapey finish, but it has a definite spiciness like you would like a red wine. That spicy, peppery flavoring definitely has that as a flavor.
A velvety finish to it, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. It has a pepper palate, spicy palate, but then it has that nice kind of bold. Well, Pinot Noirs are more kind of subtle, I guess. They're softer, they're juicier, but it has that still grapey finish. It's very good.
Kind of notes of vanilla in there, caramel.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little. Yeah, and it pops right out as well. You don't really have to work for it. It's just kind of there.
Exactly. I like that. That's a good phrase. You don't have to work for it. It's there. I do want to mention, though, something fun about, so this the actual distillery is Prohibition Spirits, is the distillery. If you're looking for this bourbon, you can find it at Total Wine anywhere else. But the story of Joseph Hooker, Captain Joseph Hooker, and we were kind of talking a little bit off air. It's kind of fun that, so he was a general in the Civil War, fought other battles as well, but he was a ladies' man. He was a ladies' man, and he was a whiskey drinker. So kind of a rambunctious fellow, if you will, back in those days. So the general actually kept morale high among his troops by inviting a posse of ladies to fraternize with the gents. And at first, these women became known as Hooker's Brigade or Hooker's Girls. But later on, they would become known just as plain hookers. So the legendary General Hooker liked to carry on so much with women and whiskey that he popularized the word hooker to its common use. So kind of, I didn't know that when I got this whiskey. I was like, okay, cool. It's a California whiskey. It'll kind of fit in a little bit with our story. And then as I'm looking into it, I'm like, wow, this whiskey, I mean, obviously the whiskey wasn't named that then, but the founder, if you will, of this whiskey brand is the person that made the name hooker a common word. Interesting.
That's bizarre.
Yeah. Right? So,
it
but yeah.
doesn't surprise me that it stems from whiskey. The two things go hand in hand if you think about
exactly.
The Old West.
Yeah.
Hookers and whiskey.
Yeah. Not a huge shock there, so I guess it's fitting. So, well, there you go. Hooker's House whiskey, peppery, spicy, a little caramel, a little vanilla, finishes in Pinot Noir barrels. Very, very good. Make sure to check that out. Hope you enjoyed today's story of spirits and sports history. Michael Thompson, the Count of Marietta. I appreciate you, man, as always.
Thank you so much for having me on this show, mate. It's been a pleasure.
We'll definitely do it again. Hopefully not in quarantine. Hopefully in actual person.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But thank you, everyone, for listening to the Spirits and Sports History Podcast here on the Believe Podcast Network. Please stay safe, stay healthy, and hope you enjoyed the story. And we'll talk to you guys all very, very soon.